All right, welcome back. I think this is the last one. I think we should be able to bring it home. So what sort of impacts do wildfires have on society? Well, besides the burning and the destruction, there are other health effects of wildfires that often don't get talked about. Short-term exposure to wildfire-related fine particulate matter, so called PM, particulate matter 2.5 in reference to a size. So fine, small, this is, microscopic, sometimes unseen particulate matter from wildfires when they burn in the air is increasing deaths worldwide from respiratory disease, heart-related causes, and cancer. So PM 2.5s are tiny particles that enter the lungs and the bloodstream that can facilitate this. Wildfire PM 2.5s, particulate matter, is more toxic than from urban fires because of its just sheer chemical makeup, smaller particulate size, and associated higher temperatures. Wildfires tend to burn a little bit hotter, meaning you can burn different kinds of material, which can cause more particulate, different types of particulate, different chemical makeup of material to be burned and into the air. You inhale that stuff, it can be bad. And this can be inhaled from hundreds of miles away. There's indication that smoke from wildfires can spread over 600 miles, sometimes even much further than that, depending on how big the wildfires are. And worldwide, there's more than 33,500 deaths a year attributed to wildfire pollution. Not directly from being burned, but just from the pollution people inhale, causing lung disease, heart disease, cancer. So smoke from wildfires in the western U.S. is very much well known, can blanket much of the country in smoke, creating air quality, unhealthy air quality all the way over to the East Coast, so across the whole country. Older adults, pregnant women, children, people with pre-existing respiratory and heart conditions, all are vulnerable to this, and I'm one of those. So, what do? If there's a large wildfire, even sometimes if you're way far away, maybe you just hear about it on the news. Great idea. Keep the windows and doors closed. Run your air conditioner to clean out and filter out that air. Do not use anything that burns, candles, fireplaces, etc. Do not vacuum. Vacuum actually stirs up particles already inside your home, so don't vacuum. Kind of a common sense here, but do not smoke or tobacco or anything else that's smokable. It only puts more pollution into the air. Before we move on, let me give you another part of the super secret code. It is the number 6. One more time, the number 6. You got me? The number 6. So here's a map, current when this is being made at November 8th, 2021. This doesn't show all those wildfires that we saw earlier, just some of the more bigger ones out in the west, California, Oregon, Idaho, Montana. And it also shows you, the blue shows you the smoke coming from wildfires. So you can see a good amount of the U.S. and Canada is blanketed from wildfires. This is smoke from wildfires. Still going on. This looks at air quality in certain areas as it relates to PM 2.5 particulate matter from wildfires. Mostly green, but again, you see that yellow in some areas here. Again, a lot of that smoke is kind of in the central U.S. Again, that central U.S., a lot of that yellow here. So this is particulate matter. So moderate it's kind of moderate. So there is some effect. It could be worse. There are some areas that it's red, very unhealthy. The air is unhealthy because of wildfires for everyone. But moderate or unhealthy for sensitive groups, some of those orange dots. So wildfires, besides burning, besides death, does have other impacts. In fact, more people die from inhaling the particulate matter than directly from burning in the wildfires themselves. So with the bad comes the good. So what are some natural service benefits or natural service functions, some benefits of wildfires? So they can leave an accumulation of carbon and increase the nutrient content of the soil. So when you burn material, that burnt material can settle on the ground. It can mix with the soil to create a more fertile soil for material to eventually grow back. It reduces populations of microorganisms, so bacteria. So burning vegetation and even the ground can reduce some of those harmful microorganisms in the vegetation and soil. It decreases species competition, whether it's plants or animals. So getting rid of some things allows other things to thrive. It may trigger a release of seeds or stimulate flowering in some species. There's actually some species of trees, coniferous trees, those with cones, that the cones will only open up and spread their seeds when they're burnt. So there are some trees that specifically need wildfire for them to generate new trees. It does remove the surface litter, not human litter, but the natural surface litter, the dead leaves, twigs, and whatever, for grasses to grow. And it helps to recycle nutrients, back into the ground. So you re-nutrient enrich the ground, new material kind of grows back. That cycle, that life cycle, the circle of life, like the Lion King says, continues. Also, if there is any downed trees that don't get fully burned, some of those decaying logs can provide homes for plants and animals, little things, little mosses that tend to grow on them as well. So there are some benefits to wildfires. So should we try and put out every wildfire? So every wildfire that ever occurs, should we try to put them all out? Think about it. Some of these can be very large, intense resources. We're not even talking about the chemicals used to fight them, the water used to fight them. So it should, in some cases nature depends on them. So there are certain fires that we need to put out, typically when they're threatening lives or structures. If they're kind of out in the middle of nowhere, we tend to let them do their thing. But again, if they are threatening property or life, then we need to manage them. So fire management. Now, it's difficult because, again, large wildfires cannot be prevented, and probably not all should be suppressed. The natural life cycle of a forest and some ecosystems need that periodic wildfire. But if we are trying to manage fires, some primary approaches include science, education, data collection, use of something called prescribed burn. So understanding fires, learning about it, teaching others about it. So, teaching them not to live in places where there's wildfires, or what to do if there is, or how to recognize the fuel of a wildfire, whatever it may be. Collecting data, wildfires, when they are occurring, we can collect data. So for future events, we can understand a little bit more. And to get ahead of a wildfire, we might, again, use something called a prescribed burn. So prescribed burn is an attempt to manage the forest through controlled burning. It's purposely setting small fires, so that in the future a big fire doesn't occur. So it's really a way to counteract dangerous buildup of fuel from fire suppression. That's just not putting out any fires. It really reduces the fuel for more catastrophic fires, but you have to have a plan. So again, with the prescribed burn, what wildland firefighters will do is, if they notice there's a lot of area with a lot of ground litter, a lot of dry stuff, grass, twigs, leaves, so they'll purposely start a fire and have a plan to control it, to burn out that ground litter, so that way that fuel isn't there. And they do this quite often. So some tools of the trade of a wildland firefighter, much like those that perished in the Yarnell Hill fire, is this. Typically, a wildland firefighter doesn't have water. They're out in the middle of nowhere. They don't have a hose. So they got to put it out other ways. A lot of it has to do with digging, cutting stuff down, knowing the weather, and this is what's used for prescribed burns. They usually have a special fire retardant clothing that they wear, a little bit different than city firefighters. They have to be a little bit more agile, so a little bit less clothing. But a lot of what they do is either prescribe burns ahead of time, purposely set fires and then manage them, or if they are faced with a wildfire situation, using these tools to dig trenches to get rid of vegetation so that if a fire's coming, the firefighters will get rid of all these trees and bushes and vegetation and dig it out and clear a path. So when that fire gets to that path, there's nothing to burn, the fire goes out. So it's really little to do with water. There are some planes and helicopters that will fly over, dump water or dump chemicals, but what the humans are doing, like on the ground, is mostly digging and cutting. So you can see here the spout of the fire canister, the prescribed burn. You can see these kind of dead trees. It looks cold. It's like fall or winter time. But you can see all this dry brush. This is just, perfect fuel for getting a fire going. So if they could just manage this and get rid of all of this stuff, well, then that would prevent a larger fire in the future. It looks like there's some sort of river or stream maybe back here, or lake or pond that they're using to back the fire up against, so that it looks like if the fire can't go backwards, so they're controlling it moving this way, it looks like. So kind of how all of that works out. So again, there's natural fire breaks. If they're going to do a prescribed burn, having a plan, having a road, having some sort of river or stream, creating what's called a hand line that's digging out an area where there's no vegetation, and then starting the fire, and then having it move. So notice the V, how it's moving away from the point of that V. So it's moving in one direction, whereas they started a backfire going the other direction, so that when they meet up, there's nothing else to burn. They kind of put themselves out. But there's natural fire breaks that the fire can't jump over. Again, a stream, a road, or digging, again, what's called a hand line. That's where they're using those tools to dig up any grass, any trees, cut down anything to create a dirt path that once the fire gets there, it can't jump over because there's no vegetation there. That's kind of how a prescribed burn works. But educating yourself, don't putting yourselves in harm's way. My sister, for example, lives up in the mountains in Colorado, and she wants to move out because the increase of wildfires there in the past 10 years, she has to worry about that every year. Is my house going to burn down from a wildfire? It's a very real threat. So she's trying to move out of the mountains of Colorado. So she educated herself and knows that, fires are an inevitability. They're going to happen. But is it going to affect you? Is it going to get your house? Time will tell. Yeah, I think that's all I got. So what are some of the big or main ideas as it pertains to wildfires? Well, the three factors of wildfire behavior: fuel, topography, and weather, how that shapes wildfires. Causes, lightning versus human. The locations of wildfires, whether it's human caused or lightning caused, the big wildfires as well. Yarnell Hill Fire, we'll touch that in the assignment and lab as well. And the effects of on the geologic environment, how wildfires can in reverse impact geology and all of those impacts on society. Well, that's it. So we'll stop there. And this is a hazard very real to us in Arizona. It's affected by geology and also affects the geology as well. Well, we'll stop there. It's been my honor. It's been my pleasure. Until next time, see you then.